What you're looking at here, this is basically the playbook for stopping a citywide crisis before it even starts. We're going to dive deep into the essential and, let's be honest, often invisible world of wastewater treatment. We'll get to see the proactive work that keeps our communities safe, clean, and running smoothly.
And it's a really serious question to ask, because these places, they really are a city's lifeline. If one fails, we're not talking about a small problem. We're talking about raw sewage backing up into streets, contaminated rivers, and some really serious public health crises. The stakes? They're about as high as they get, which means preventing failure is pretty much the only real option on the table.
So you've really got two choices. You can either react to chaos, or you can operate with a smart strategy. The best-run plants out there don't just put out fires, they build a whole system to make sure the fires never start in the first place. You see, proactive maintenance isn't just another chore on a list, it is the core strategy. So let's break down what that actually looks like.
Okay, first up, let's explore what you could call the plant's heart and its circulatory system. I'm talking about the electrical and mechanical gear that provides the power and the pulse for the entire operation.
Before a single tool even gets picked up, safety is everything, period. This procedure right here, Lockout/Tagout, or LOTO for short, is completely non-negotiable. It's a physical lock that makes absolutely sure a machine has zero chance of turning on while someone is working on it. It's such a simple step, but it saves lives, and it is always step one.
Now, get this. Here's a fact that sounds totally backwards. The #1 reason for bearing failure isn't too little lubrication, it's actually too much. That's right. If you pump in too much grease, you can blow out the seals and cause a ton of damage. It's a perfect example of how this kind of maintenance is a game of precision, more like surgery than just hammering on things. Think of these checks as a regular physical for the plant's heart. You're making sure it can breathe by keeping the vents clear so it doesn't overheat. You're checking its posture, making sure the alignment and belt tension are just right to reduce stress. And just like a doctor with a stethoscope, you're listening for any weird noises and watching that amp jaw because those are the very first signs that something might be going wrong.
So, those motors we just talked about, they're powering the real workhorses of the plant, the pumps. These things are moving unbelievable amounts of liquid, 24/7, with no breaks. So how on earth do you keep them from failing? Well, more often than not, the answer comes down to one tiny little component, the seal.
All right, so you've got two main kinds of pump seals, and this is where it gets pretty interesting, because they have completely opposite rules. On the left, you've got the stuffing box, which is actually designed to leak. That little drip is critical for keeping it cool. But the mechanical seal on the right, totally different story. It should be bone dry. If you see a single drop, you know that seal has already failed. You absolutely have to know which one you're looking at.
So for those stuffing boxes, what's the magic number? Well, there it is, 1 to 2 drips per second. Any slower, and that pump is going to overheat. Any faster, and you're just wasting water and wearing things out. It's such a tiny detail, but getting it right has a huge impact on keeping that pump running for years and years.
And hey, it's not all about the seals. There are other simple habits that can prevent massive headaches later on. For instance, exercising a valve, which just means opening and closing it every so often, stops it from seizing up. And if a pump sits idle for too long, the sledge inside can literally harden like concrete. A simple hand turn of the impeller every now and then prevents a super costly and difficult repair down the road.
Okay, we've moved the water, now it's time to actually treat it. This brings us to what you could call the plant's pharmacy, its chemical systems. And in here, precision is absolutely everything, both for the treatment to work right and for the safety of the crew. When you're working with these kinds of chemicals, your absolute last line of defense is the emergency shower and eyewash station. And as you can see from this checklist, it has to be tested every single week, without fail. The water can't be freezing, it can't be scalding, it has to be just right, otherwise you risk making a bad situation worse. And look at that last one, it must be able to run for a full 15 minutes. We're about to see why that number is so critical.
Let's just focus on this number for a second, 15. Why 15 minutes? Because that's the minimum time medical experts say you need to properly flush dangerous chemicals out of your eyes. Anything less than that, and you're gambling with someone's eyesight. A station that can't hold up for 15 minutes isn't just a broken piece of equipment, it's a complete failure of the safety net.
So, that was the emergency stuff, but proactive safety is also about daily habits. This is super simple, but absolutely critical. The moment a chemical transfer is done, the line gets flushed with water. Right away. This immediate little step prevents crystals from forming, which can clog up the lines and bring the whole system to a grinding halt.
You know, when you boil it all down, maintaining the chemical systems really comes down to these two habits.
On one side, you're constantly calibrating for accuracy. On the other, you have a zero-tolerance policy for leaks. I mean zero. Because even a tiny, harmless-looking drip can literally eat through concrete and steel over time, creating a massive hazard.
Now let's move to the biological core of the plant. You could think of these as the living engines that do the real heavy lifting of the treatment. We're talking about the aeration and digestion systems, and they need just the right environment and fuel to do their job.
So in the aeration tanks, the whole goal is to get oxygen to the helpful bacteria. Seriously, just picture a giant aquarium, but for an entire city. That means keeping the air filters clean, just like on your vacuum cleaner. It also means doing something called an air bump, where you blast high-pressure air through the system to shake off all the gunk that builds up. It's all about making sure the good bacteria have plenty of air to breathe.
Now for the anaerobic process, that's the one that works without oxygen, it's all about keeping things in a stable, warm environment. But over time, grit and scum start to build up at the bottom, and that's a huge problem. It literally reduces the digester's volume, which means it can't process as much waste. So cleaning it out every so often is absolutely essential to keep it running efficiently.
And this leads me to a really critical safety warning. The gas that these digesters produce is highly flammable. The safety equipment on these lines, things like flame arresters and relief valves, are pretty much the only things preventing a catastrophic explosion. They are there for a very, very good reason, and they must never be bypassed. So we've looked at the plant's heart, its nervous system, and its engine. Let's kind of zoom out now and pull it all together. Let's talk about the philosophy, the mindset, that governs everything we've just seen.
And this right here, this is the key takeaway. Proactive maintenance is not about just mindlessly ticking off boxes on a list. It's a mindset. It's a discipline of being constantly vigilant, of training your eyes and your ears to see the small signs of trouble before they snowball into huge failures. It's about understanding that every single part affects the whole system.
And in the end, that's what it all comes down to. This discipline is what separates a reliable public utility that protects the community from a costly public liability that's just waiting to cause a disaster. All that quiet, consistent work we've just talked about, that's what guarantees our safety and the health of our environment.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? This is just one of these vast, hidden systems that make our modern lives possible. So maybe the next time you turn on a tap or flush a toilet, just take a second. Think about that invisible network and the dedicated people working around the clock to keep your world running.